Hello, everybody. And I do believe that we are almost live, if not live. So a very, very warm welcome to all of you, wherever you're joining from on this powerful total blood moon lunar eclipse day in Scorpio. It's such a great pleasure today to have my dear friend and master astrologer, Pam Gregory. She said, don't introduce me. They all know who I am. So we all know who you are, at least most do. And I'd just like to say a big thank you, Pam, for coming on today, even though you feel as though you were sharing a little earlier that you're not as prepared as you'd like to be. But I think maybe it's just, we'll be fine.
Yeah, absolutely. There's just a lot going on for a lot of people. So I've been, trying to help where I can. Yeah, I'm sure you've been the same. Yeah.
Ooh, yes, it's been pretty intense. So, Pam, what is it that you might like to share about the aspects that are going on right now, the aspects that are somehow coming up? Is there anything that sort of springs to mind for you that you'd like to discuss today?
Yeah, I mean, just what a whacking peak the energy is at right now. Total lunar eclipse, which is pretty rare. Also a supermoon. The moon is at perigee, its closest point in its orbit to the Earth. That very much increases the intensity of the emotions. As we know, Scorpio is the most intense water sign. So people are going through a lot. They're going through incredible spiritual transformations and mystical experiences, or they're having intensity in a very different way. But there is no doubt that this is one of the major peaks in the year, I think, for shedding the old and stepping into the new, stepping into a higher timeline. And I think I've just made a video, actually, which was very spontaneous, because I woke up this morning with an incredibly overwhelming sense of love. And I just wanted to talk about love in the video. It's a very short one, but that's got to be our compass point from now on. That's got to be our compass point. There's so much noise and war and destruction, and we can't keep on going round and round and round the hamster wheel. Because if that's, as I've said many times, if that's our focus, we're never going to break out of the hamster wheel. And this is one of the greatest opportunities this year. There are others, but I think this is one of the biggies for breaking out of the repeated intensity, which can often feel quite self-destructive with Scorpio energy. And what will help us with this is, I think, Scorpio, as we both know, Bracha, is to do with elimination. And without getting too colourful, there's a lot of elimination appearing in the world right now, a lot of pretty dark, murky stuff. And it's just the beginning of the process. This is not a pinpoint where you think, well, nothing happened to me on Monday. You know, we're just at the beginning of a process which is going to reverberate all through the year. And it's also interesting, of course, that Scorpio is the sign related to reproduction. And if we look at what has recently been happening in the States with the abortion laws potentially, and Roe versus Wade, and what's happening with the Supreme Court, and, you know, my view, your view, it really doesn't matter here, but it's simply that it's reflecting the symbolism of the times. And inevitably, that is an issue that brings up incredibly strong emotions in people. Again, Scorpio energy. So I think it's very interesting that both the reproductive side, those subjects are coming out very strongly. But I mean, my goodness, the information which is coming out on alternative medias that we can't talk about here, of course, is very powerful. I think to change the world for the better. You know, we've really got into that. We've got to get into love is my compass needle, I think, from now on. That's how I felt from waking up this morning.
Wow, that's beautiful, Pam. Thank you for sharing that. And that's so clear. That's like a clear sound of a bell. You know, when the Buddhists, they ring that bell and it sort of clears the air. It clears the static. It clears the interferences.
Yeah.
Yes, that's the clarity of just, that's the most important frequency.
Yeah.
Yeah, there is nothing else that can cut through all the superfluous noises. And there's so many distractions, there's so many different pulls in different directions. And I loved what you said, Pam, about Scorpio being about elimination. And I think it also boils down to now, as we come into all this Gemini energy, what choice do you make? What are you going to eliminate from your world? Yeah, you're clear, your compass now is love, right? What do you need to eliminate? I'm asking us here maybe, so that you are not pulled, sucked back into the old vortices that make you feel awful, that make you feel terrible. So what do you need to somehow absolutely eliminate? And I think that it's about looking at who is influencing you. You know, if you're going to be around thieves, you're probably going to end up a thief. If you're ending up around smokers, you're going to find it difficult to stop smoking. If you're around people who drink, and you want to stop drinking, it's not going to be easy. So what is around you that you maybe want to change or eliminate altogether? Because Scorpio is about this transformational energy. So there's as you say, this is a point, Pam, at which we can absolutely transform with no looking back. It's like done. The curtain is down and it's end of act.
Absolutely. And there's such a sense as we shift up on timelines, particularly if we can focus on love, that our past almost turns to dust. It just disintegrates. We can't kind of connect or touch it or feel it because we're so focused on creating with love. You know, that's how I feel. And yes, Gemini, very much about choices. Are we going to keep going round the hamster wheel? Same old self-talk, same old focus, same old negativity around how we view ourselves. That we know doesn't get us anywhere. So this is such an opportunity, I think, to break the pattern. Break the pattern, partly because we start to see in a bigger sense what's been happening in the world, and that seeing that awakening of what is revealed can actually in itself jump us onto a higher timeline where it all just falls away. We don't even have to work at fighting anymore. It just disintegrates because love is the highest vibration. And we get into the laws of quantum physics and how they work in terms of transmuting lower frequency energy. And I think we've really got to start thinking like this of moving the Gemini energy from kind of Twitter. I mean, Twitter is such a great word if you think of Gemini, because Gemini is linked to feathered birds and chat. You know, little snippets here and there of chat, and so Twitter is a great name for that. You know, irrespective of what all that's about in terms of censorship, but we've got to move from that kind of low level day-to-day trivia to something much greater and grander in who we are as new humans.
Beautiful. And isn't it interesting, Pam, that the esoteric ruler of Gemini is Venus?
Beautiful.
You see, so, and the reason for that, I think, because I've been meditating on this with the Gemini energy coming up so strongly, especially with Mars in Gemini later in the year. I think that, as you say about Twitter, we've got to get away from gossip. Gossip is the poison sword. And gossip comes in the form of medical advice that's toxic. I mean, there's so many ways in which this gossip is used that's not loving. That's not that frequency. And I think, as you say, if we're going to shift timelines, to use your verbiage, we have to somehow go beyond ever speaking badly about people to other people. I think
totally 100%. And I'm afraid I gave a couple of people a very hard time yesterday because there was some kind of bickering on my Facebook page, and normally I tolerate and just let it go, but this time I said, okay, enough. We are bigger and better than this. This is not the route to 5D, fifth dimensional living and unity consciousness. This is not living with love. This is not living from our hearts. This is, as you say, low-level toxicity. So I'm afraid I gave them quite a hard time and say, anything disrespectful to anybody on this page will be deleted. Full stop. Is that clear?
But that's clear. That is a clear.
But
wonderful. But you see, a clear sound like that is, again, you're ringing your bell, Pam.
Yeah,
you're ringing your bell. Yeah,
we must get beyond this. We're so much more powerful than this as beings of love.
Yes, and I don't think we realize quite how powerful our words are. Gemini, the power of the word. And you know what it's like. A doctor can say, well, sorry, you probably only got 2 months to live. Mm-hmm. Or they can say, we can beat this. We can do, yeah. I mean, that's not to say you should be false, but there can be the kiss of life or the kiss of death.
Yeah, very well said. And it's interesting, isn't it? Gemini, words, that's what we're moving into. And I know several people who were given that diagnosis, got 2 months to live, 6 months to live, nothing we can do. And they completely turned it around and are now thriving. Words can be weapons.
Totally. I mean, you may have been, that's dead right. Sorry, Pam, I didn't mean to.
No, I'm done. Yeah.
But, and all the messages that you've got by good meaning people in your life earlier on who may have said, oh, well, because I remember, what's her name? What's the lady, the lovely 90-odd-year-old, the gift? What's her name? Edie?
Oh, yes.
Edith.
Egan? Dr. Edith Egan.
Yes.
She's in the 90s and she spent years in Auschwitz.
And she remembers her mother saying, well, you didn't get the looks, but you got the brains. Yeah. So even that, she got the brains, so she used the brain, but that sense of not having the looks, and who gave you an incorrect message that you're still carrying around? That you're not this enough, and you're a woman, and my message from my dad was, well, you're a woman, it doesn't really matter what you do, you don't need a career. Okay, that was, and he meant well, it was not meant in malice, but what are you carrying around with you that you need to eliminate now that you can, so you can raise to that higher frequency of love, of loving self, so that you can really express love to others, if that makes sense.
Absolutely. Actually, quite funny sort of tangent about words being weapons. I remember when I was about 16, I suppose, and the little girl across the road must have been about 5 by then. She used to pop over quite often. And I was getting ready to go to one of my first parties and putting some mascara on in the bathroom. And she said, why are you doing that? And I said, it's to make me pretty. And there was a pause, and then she said, why doesn't it? I've never forgotten that. And I won't tell you how many years from when I was 16. I have never forgotten that. So I can laugh, but words are
the power of those words that stay with you. So it's a good time with Mercury retrograde till June the 4th to really begin to notice, what are the messages here? What am I avoiding? Yeah, am I just scrolling? Am I just watching video upon video? Am I not feeling nourished by what I'm watching? Why? Why aren't I living to my fullest?
Yeah, and to become so much more conscious of the, the rumbles of self-talk, all that unconscious rolling around in the head. It just runs all day long.
It runs. I mean, somebody's just commented, add the good in. There's a lot of good from the past, and that's true.
Yes, there is, absolutely.
But we have a tendency to run, as you say, on the hamster wheel, Pam, the negative ones, like, can't do, not good enough, and those things.
Yeah.
So yeah.
So and you know, I just think we must step into something higher, and a big part of that comes with the mastery of our thinking, being conscious of our thinking, in order that we can channel it into intentions and focus and really step into our mastery. That's how I feel, as opposed to the rolling around of any negativity. And yes, it's absolutely right. There's a tremendous amount of good in the past, but I think there can be even more good in the future because of the frequency that we are stepping into, that we are now in. We're just absolutely saturated in these high frequencies to a degree that we have never, ever, ever, ever been before in our lifetimes. And it's coming in at such a pace. So we are on the fast track in our evolution to a new superhuman in the most organic, natural sense. That's how I feel. And so we've got to ride that wave rather than clinging to a familiar past. And I think Scorpio being, going back to the total lunar eclipse, Scorpio being such a fixed sign, with any fixed sign, there's a desire to kind of first law of wing walking, keep hanging on to what you're hanging on to, and until you're hanging on to something else, you don't kind of step off the wing. So there's with fixed signs, there's always a desire to hang on to the familiar, to hang on to the past. And so if you have if you have planets or angles between, I'd say 22, where the nodal axis is, and 29 of the fixed signs, which are Taurus, Leo, Scorpio, Aquarius, you may be feeling a lot of intensity around these issues of needing to let go of the old in a bigger way than people who haven't got planets and angles at those points. It's a strong demand, and we have to do it because we're moving to something lighter, literally more light in our bodies, something simpler, something more loving, something more community-based, coming together to share, and we're dropping the baggage. And that baggage can be physical, it can be your work, your relationships, whatever the baggage is that makes you feel, Uranus in Taurus, stale, dead, heavy. Oh, you don't want to do that again. Those are the elements of life that just have to go in order to. It's almost like you've got an inflated balloon, but it's being held down by an anchor in the sea. And as soon as you release the anchor, the balloon bobs right up on the surface and is free to float. But as long as it's anchored down with that weight, it can't do that. And that's the kind of image I have for the process that we're moving through right now.
Oh, that's beautiful, Pam. Yeah, really beautifully put. Yeah. It's and I think the Gemini is encouraging us to lighten up.
Lighten up and laugh and find the joy in every day, however grim it is out there. And don't focus on the grimness. Turn the television off. That's a good start. That's a good start for frequency.
It's a very good start.
But you have to be determined to find the joy in every day.
Yes, you have to decide. It's a decision once again in your mind. I'm going to be happy no matter what.
Yeah, it's a choice, Gemini. We're back to Gemini. Yes. And it really, happiness is a choice because we always have that choice of focus. And that was the wonderful book. Oh, my goodness. He wrote it in Auschwitz. Viktor Frankl.
Viktor Frankl.
Yeah, yes. Brilliant book. And it was actually all about choice. Choosing which thoughts to focus on. And he said, despite the horror all around him and the imprisonment, he was still free to choose his thoughts.
Yeah. That's amazing. Yes.
And he survived incredibly and wrote that book. And that's what we've got to think about, I think, with that Gemini energy of choice. We have to because otherwise we'll never have a happy life. We'll never be happy. We have to choose to find the joy in every day.
I love that. And by choosing the love frequency and not allowing anybody to toxify your thoughts. I had it just recently, actually, having a few issues with microphones and sounds. But the company has got into a kind of bickering situation with the guy who's a sound engineer who's been coming to the house. And they're calling each other the most horrible things. And I'm like, don't include me in this, guys. And in fact, please don't do it, because I notice how it begins to color how I see the people. Yeah, it's so.
We infect each other with our energy unknowingly. It just happens all the time.
Yeah, yeah.
I think what is encouraging with this Scorpio new moon, although there's tremendous intensity with it, there's also a lot of new. I mean, Jupiter has moved into Aries now, the very first sign of the zodiac, on the 10th, 11th of May. Mars will move in there on the 25th, its own sign. And it's, this fresh new energy, this new episode. Jupiter has a 12-year orbit, Mars roughly a 2-year orbit. But also Uranus is moving on to new degrees, 15 degrees of Taurus. It hasn't been there for about 84 years because that's the length of its orbit. So there's a sense of newness coming in that we haven't really had 2020, 2021, when it was much heavier, much more contracted and constrained. Yes. So there's a sense of freshness. Despite the heaviness, there's also a sense of lightness and freshness and newness coming in.
Yes, it's almost like with the lunar eclipse and the South Node in Scorpio, we're being encouraged to release all that heavy trauma, heavy stuff, and to move in towards, what can we do that's new? What can we do that's different? What with the Gemini and the Aries energy? Yep. This is the upward thrust rather than the downward thrust. Yeah.
It's interesting what happened to the crypto market last Friday as well, isn't
it? Just about to bring that up. Yes.
That was very tough for a lot of people because Taurus Scorpio axis, as we know, is about finance, money, wealth. Uranus in Taurus till 2026, very much about digital currencies. Scorpio is very much about investments that you're making. And so this was inevitably going to be a very tough testing point with this total lunar eclipse supermoon. And it was. I mean, I think one of the currencies, Terra Luna, lost 99% of its value, which is just devastating for some people.
Totally. I mean, some people have just, it's, as you say, absolutely devastating. And I think it's a warning for all of us to find security within rather than without. Yes, we need certain things, but how much do you need? How much of everything do we need to have? And these markets are like casinos. Yeah, it's almost like you're gambling. There's a sense of gambling, and whilst there might be some excitement in that, where's the value? Where's the reality? Uranus in Taurus. We have to create new systems. And my feeling is, I don't know what yours is, Pam, is that the systems are going to be very turbulent for quite some time to come yet.
Yeah, I agree 100%. And I think we have to use a huge amount of intuition with this and discernment. But also, I think, and again, this has come to me recently, in the past, we always thought, I have to have everything myself to be self-sufficient. I have to have everything here, but actually, as we move into community, and I'm luckily in a strong group, we share within the group. Well, if you haven't got that, I've got that, and I can share it with you. We can come together to create that. It doesn't mean that everybody has to have everything to be self-sufficient. And again, that's part of a loving community that's building. And we have so moved away from those values, even of a year ago, of stuff. And North Node in Taurus, ruled by Venus, that's where we're headed. We're headed towards a much greater sense of love and sharing in this.
Yes, and appreciation of nature, of Mother Earth, of our senses, of the enjoyments of life. Yeah, we've been running like hamsters and going where?
And nature is just, I've said it before, but it's just, I can't get over it. It's just illuminated at the moment. It's like the trees got light bulbs in them. So whatever is happening in the environment, nature is jumping an octave, I feel. It's just because it's thriving, certainly where I live. And, this isn't although I live in a rural area, I'm sure the air isn't completely pure, let's say, but nevertheless, nature is absolutely like it's showtime with the colors.
Yes.
There's a jump in frequency in nature that the light is so much brighter in the leaves and the blossoms. And sometimes I just stand and stare at it like a child. Wow, it's just beautiful. So whatever is happening, there's a vigor and a surge, an evolutionary surge in nature, which I can certainly see with my own eyes very clearly, and I'm sure lots of other people can. Nature is, the Earth is on its own upgrade, its own evolutionary path, and we're just hanging on to her as we upgrade as well. Yeah, riding the wave.
Yeah, that's really well put, Pam. Yeah, that's excellent. So what is the next? Yes, you've mentioned that we've got Jupiter conjunct Mars in Aries coming up.
Yeah, 29th of May.
29th of this month.
Yeah.
What's the next big sort of big aspect that's coming? What would you say it is?
I suppose if I'm looking down the track, if we're looking at sort of major peaks in the year, I would look towards the last week in July and the first week in August, where you've got that Mars-Uranus North Node conjunction, that triple conjunction, which is very eruptive, explosive, shocking, awakening. Now that could be, as we know, I mean, the listeners could do this bit themselves, but as we know with Uranus, it can be earthquakes, volcanoes of any kind, literal, political, financial. It can be a big shock coming out in the news in some way that is to do with truth, clarity, and suddenly we can see things with fresh eyes in a way that we just couldn't see them before. It can again refer to some kind of digital development, either turbulence in the markets, or some new digital currencies coming out, or some new platform, or it could be that that's when the central banks fully launch their own centralized, don't forget that word centralized, guys, digital currencies. It could be that. It could be, with this could be quite aggressive as well, I think, potentially. But if we focus on how do we use the astrology to the highest, then I think we have to focus on truth and awakening. Let's energize that potential for truth and awakening, because as you and I know, Bracha, with any astrological aspect, it's like a multifaceted diamond. It has a potential of possible executions. And actually, I've been thinking those possible executions of those aspects, whatever they are, can all be happening depending on which timeline you're on. We have multiple timelines happening at the same time. But to make sure that you are on the highest timeline, we have to focus on the highest potential of that aspect unfolding, which for me is truth and awakening, shifting to higher mind, maybe more galactic connection as well. I mean, how do you feel about that? You channel the Palladians.
Well, I mean, sooner or later, we're going to have disclosure. Sooner or later, it's got to come out, and that the end of July could well be a point that is an activation point of the galactic energies. Would you agree, Pam?
Absolutely, and wouldn't that be shocking for people?
Woof! Yeah. Or a relief, maybe, for others. It's like, at last.
We knew all along, absolutely. But again, we'd get, truth, shock, clarity, and the connection to the galactics would give us this greater sense of being galactic citizens that we are stepping into.
That we're so much bigger. And I think that includes everything. We only use such a tiny part of our brain, such a tiny part of our potential, and still staying small. And I think that the lunar eclipse with the square to Saturn, in Aquarius, is about breaking out from that smallness and being able to see that there are unlimited possibilities for your health, for your career, for your relationships. You have unlimited potential. Yeah. And the more that we can encourage one another to explore that potential, and that, go for it and really celebrate the uniqueness of every single being, wow, I mean, then we are unstoppable, aren't we, Pam?
We are, and we're using astrology strategically to co-create, rather than any sense of the planets are fated and we're just the victims, the rubber hitting the road. Because there's still such a sense of that with people. What are the planets going to say? What's going to happen tomorrow? Well, we create it. What would you like to happen tomorrow? next week, next month. We are creating it. The more of us come together in the highest possibility, the better it's going to be. I think really recognizing our power, which we've never done before because we've been in such a programmed system. This is the big shift that's happening this year. We have the power to upshift those possibilities. And there's a whole multitude of them in any moment. So what can we do to envisage the highest, share that with each other and say, right, hold hands, and we're jumping into that right now. We're going to create it.
Yeah. Yeah. Woo!
So how do you feel, Bracha, about the next big thing to focus on?
Well, I certainly would agree with you about the end of July. Yeah, I mean, this is the next, to me, the next big, shall we say, peak. And then I'm sort of looking towards the end of the year as we come back to that Saturn-Uranus square once again. And then there's the, I can't remember the date of it, but I think it's July and November when America gets its Pluto hit again.
July, December, I think, but yeah, close enough. Yeah. So, and
then, please, no.
Yeah, and then more Taurus, Scorpio eclipses. In the we have again a total lunar eclipse on the 8th, the day of the midterm elections, conjunct Uranus.
You couldn't make it up, could you? So revelations, things coming out suddenly, unexpectedly. Yeah, and I would say let out whatever needs to come out, but don't inspect it afterwards. We have a tendency to want to go and have a look inside and what was that? Were they liver stones or gallstones? Let's have a look at them. Oh, how big were they? Let's measure them. That's not the interesting bit. Let's just flush that away to make something new. It's almost like as if we've got caught up in many ways in that old system of swimming around in it, shall we say.
Absolutely. And also, yes, I very much see those last 3-4 months of the year as the crescendo, because it is the final square by degree, not to minute, but by degree between Saturn and Uranus at 18 of Aquarius Taurus, as we know. And because it's the last square, and after that in 2023, Saturn moves on and out of Aquarius into Pisces, that is the last big stand between freedom and constraint, I think. That one of the biggest for sure, because as we know, Saturn's all about government, rules and regulations for your safety, for your security, play by the rules, etc. And there's a sense of we've always done it this way, a sense of tradition, the status quo, don't rock the boat, don't be the renegade, whereas Uranus just says, sorry guys, I love freedom, and Saturn's the planet of the past, Uranus is the planet of the future. And so I think inevitably Uranus is going to win, but with a lot of turmoil along the way. But we then step into something different, because the interesting thing about Saturn in Aquarius was that it entered Aquarius, I believe it was March 22nd, 2020, within a day of most of the Western world going into lockdown. So Saturn is limitation, constraint. Aquarius is freedom. It moves out of Aquarius for the first time in March 2023. Does that suggest there's going to be some opening up of our freedoms from that March 2020 position? So that's going to be very interesting, I think. Yeah. And of course, at the same time, Pluto is then moving into Aquarius. And I think we've got to be incredibly, again, conscious and positive as co-creators about how that Pluto in Aquarius is going to play out.
Absolutely. Because it's got so much power, hasn't it? Pluto in Aquarius. It's like, wow. Yeah.
And it stays there till 2044.
Yeah. It's a massive... what are we going to do with our power, especially with the technology? What are we going to do with our power in virtual reality. I mean, VR is on its way, is already here, I think, for many of us. I haven't explored it. I haven't got one of those Oculus, things. I don't imagine you have. Have you, Pam?
You'd have to shoot me. I live in the dark ages very happily here.
So I think we have to really look at what are those parameters. How are we using technology? Are we using it for the good? Are we using it for the betterment of all? To make sure there's no more hunger, that there are not people without water. We've got a lot of balancing out to do.
Massive. And the old thing about what would love do? Is this the highest expression of what I'm spending my money on or whatever? I think we've got to be just much more conscious, because I think so often we just drift unconsciously into this is the latest gimmick or piece of kit or whatever, because society's encouraged us to do that, and really think, will this really have value in my life, or how can I help the world in a bigger way?
Yes.
That would use the same money, but deliver something. Build a school for people in Africa, or build a well so they can have fresh water. I mean, it's incredible the percentage of people in the world that still don't have fresh water. You're living in the Western world, we kind of take it for granted. But having spent a lot of time in India and seen that, I am so grateful for every drop of water. I never waste a drop, having spent a lot of time in India. And yes, I think just becoming much more conscious of where we are headed, because Pluto in Aquarius can be incredible for the power of the people. Incredible.
Yes.
Stepping into power in a higher way than we've ever done it. And it can be a wonderful scientific surge and creative renaissance as well. But we always have to think, where is this going to lead us? Where is this going to lead us? Is it just a gimmick entertainment for me, or is this actually going to help people's lives?
Yeah.
Is there love built into this? Is there love built into the technology? Is there love based into my decision to get it?
Oh, I love that, Pam. No, really beautifully put, because these are all questions to ask yourself, because Aquarius can be cold. There is a cold side to the energy of Aquarius.
Icy.
So, it can be icy. So we have to look at that potential energy and make sure that we consciously ask, is this coming from love, or is this ice cold with no emotion? Is it a robot?
Absolutely, because it's so emotionally detached. It's the mind of the scientist or the robot. It's purely rational, potentially. Yes. Highly technological, purely rational, no real space for humanity or heart. And I think that is something we've got to be incredibly aware of as we progress down the path. Yeah. And also this issue, the Saturn-Uranus, between centralization and decentralization. Yeah. Because the good thing about Aquarius energy is that it is decentralized, it's grassroots up. And there's some amazing initiatives that are happening that are grassroots up in terms of growing a new society that I've often referred to. And they are gathering steam by the day. Yeah. And that's where our focus has to be, to use the cosmic energy in such a powerful way to benefit people. Again, grassroots up, so that the Saturn-Uranus centralization of everything, decentralization of currencies, finances, medical services, education, everything in our society has to come from the people for the people.
Yes, absolutely. Absolutely. And of course, Pluto, although people say, it's a dwarf planet, it certainly packs a punch. It's so strong. Yes, it's got so much power. And so it can really move us technologically and also galactically into new worlds.
Yeah. And Pluto, of course, is the ruler of Scorpio with this eclipse today.
Exactly.
It is intense. It doesn't matter. It's called a dwarf planet or a whole planet, or it is extremely powerful in bringing life change. Extremely powerful, and the good thing about it is it's in a beautiful, quite tight trine to the sun.
Yes.
And that is also encouraging us to step into our power.
Yeah, very much so. Step into your power. Yes, you have so much inside of you. Yeah. And to remind one another, maybe one of us has a day where it's like, oh, I'm not feeling it. Remind that person, hey, when somebody calls you, you can empathize, but to a point. And like you did, you said on Facebook, that's it, folks. This is unacceptable. You take your power and but you do it in a way that is clean and loving.
Yeah, absolutely.
You see.
100%.
Yeah.
So what else do you feel, Bracha, looking down the timeline of this year? What else are you feeling that's strong?
Well, I'm sort of thinking about this whole issue around war and Aries energy. How do we deal constructively with the energy of Aries? Yeah, somebody's asking here, Dean is asking, the moon during the eclipse is conjunct my 25-degree Mars in the 6th. Any advice?
Well, there'll certainly be a lot of focus on health there, obviously, but also which house does Mars rule? Where's the Aries cusp? Because that will be part of the picture too.
Yes.
But it's, the eclipse can be incredibly positive in terms of a pivotal shift in the area that it's falling in your chart. So if it's 6th, what do you need to look at with your health? Any health habit that you need to let go? Is it that you sometimes eat processed food or whatever it is that is not for your highest good, that may be causing inflammation in the body, Mars?
Yes.
What you need and actually there's some incredibly great foods like tomatoes that can cause a lot of inflammation and then contribute to arthritis, etc., even though they're very healthy. So we have to be aware for our individual energy systems what is right and pure and good for us. So this lunar eclipse may be illuminating that in terms of what has to be let go for that particular person.
Yeah, thank you, Dean.
Around inflammation in the body, I'd say.
Yeah. Thank you, Pam.
And actually, areas like the colon, Scorpio.
Yes.
IBS, areas like the colon, inflamed colon, IBS, that kind of thing.
Yeah. And also possibly how you're using your time. Are you jumping into things too quickly? Are you, do you need to, or are you not jumping in quickly enough? Yes, Mars energy. Yeah, it's an energy of how to move the energy more quickly, maybe through the body. Yeah.
It's also, we mustn't forget, incredible pioneering energy. I mean, it's wonderful for pioneering. And we have to be aware that Mercury is still retrograde. So we've got to check all the details before we just go and do things. But I'm very lucky because I've got 3 planets in Aries and Mars in Aries. So I just tend to go do. Now, if I want to do something, I'll just go do it. I won't kind of check in with anybody or ask, is that all right? Or what do you think? I'll just go and do it. It's a mountain. I'm going to climb it. You just go do. It's a very simple, direct energy, Aries energy.
Yes.
And especially when Mars is there, which it will be by the 25th. And so that can be very energizing. So the most important thing is to see where the sign of Aries falls in your chart and see which area of life is being activated by both Jupiter and Aries, because that is a fabulous opportunity for you.
Yes.
And if you look back 12 years ago to June 2010 or January 2011, what was happening in that particular area of life for you at that time that you're going to have not very good English, that you're going to have an echo of this time around, because that's how the Jupiter transit works. You get a kind of vortexing upwards of what happened last time around. And so you can often very simply track with your Jupiter transits what was the growth there, what was the recognition, what was the success, what was the expansion, depending on which house it's falling in. And so that can be very helpful and very positive in terms of your planning of how do I use this energy for the highest good.
That's wonderful, Pam. Absolutely wonderful. And every time we hit something with Aries energy, it's important to know where is the sign Aries in your chart, so you know which life areas you can have a real brand new beginning.
Yeah, absolutely. 100%.
It's fresh. It's like a new birth. Yes. Yeah. It's great. Yeah.
So being cognizant, you can even do a lovely exercise, because Jupiter is pretty much 12 years to the month. It's got a very reliable 12-year orbit. So if you track back every 12 years from this May, go backwards every 12 years, and just remember what was happening in that area of life for you. It's harder to do with Mars because that comes up every 2 years roughly, but it's easy to do with Jupiter. And that's a really interesting exercise to see how your life has evolved since those times.
Yes. Wow. That is an interesting exercise. Have you done it, Pam?
Yes, I've done it in the past, and it's been absolutely fascinating, actually. And so rarely we look back down the track and pat ourselves on the back and say, well done. So rarely do we do that. We're just next thing, or surviving our days or whatever. But it's so empowering to look back and see what we've achieved, how far we've come, and even that we're all still here, or many of us are still here. The last 2 years, we're still here.
Yeah,
many of us are healthy and well and stronger than we've ever been, actually. And I think we need to take cognizance of that too.
Yeah. I also want to add one thing here, which I think is important, because I imagine you get a similar thing, is it's very important not to put too much emphasis on one particular aspect that's coming up, and to remember that your chart is a synthesis. It's an orchestra of energies, because sometimes I get somebody coming and saying, wow, this lunar eclipse is happening on my Mars, and they're quite agitated about it. Or maybe you're now looking back and going, 12 years ago, somebody said, my fiance broke it off. Well, chances are there were other frequencies going on in your chart. So whilst we as astrologers like to give tips, it's a bit like a doctor who is not willing to see the whole of you.
Yeah, and excellent point.
From a wider perspective, I just want to be sure that we use the astrology for an empowerment, and that there isn't a sort of a negative message that goes in.
Yeah, absolutely excellent point, because of course we can't refer to everyone's charts, and we don't know everyone's charts, so we've got to just focus on the general, but very important point. I mean, at any point in time, you're going to have dozens of transits, progressions, solar arcs, dozens of them. So when we just isolate one, I mean, this particular lady may have had a transiting Pluto on her ascendant-descendant axis, or transiting Uranus on her ascendant-descendant, which is much heavier as a transit than Jupiter moving into Aries. The synthesis comes with knowing the weighting of the various transits, and that's something you can only learn with experience. But every transit is not equal to every other transit in weight and meaning. They're very variable, and that the slower the orbits of the planets, usually the more significant they are in your life. The faster moving planets that whiz around every year, every 2 years, etc., they generally don't have as much impact as something, getting a massive archetype like transiting Uranus or transiting Pluto on your ascendant. That is life-changing, absolutely life-changing.
Yeah, it is. It is. And yet it's really funny, as you say, slow-moving planets, because I had a client, and I could see this Pluto was going to hit his ascendant. And do you know that nothing happened for several years? And then all of a sudden things began to happen. He had a legal situation. Yeah. But it was like it took quite a while for it to actually really manifest. I don't think it was until the third hit of the Pluto.
Yeah, it's often the final hit. It's like a key in a lock. It finally turns. Yes, I've noticed that very much. But those are normally huge times of life change. And so the Jupiter moving into Aries would be quite light in comparison. So it's very, very important that something difficult happened then. You don't think the same thing is going to happen this time around, because it could really another
Exactly. That's what I'm concerned about.
Yeah,
So
yeah,
it's almost like I want to cancel clear if there was a message that, you know, oh God, 12 years ago, this. No, your personal chart. I mean, even when we do charts of twins who are born 2 minutes or 3 minutes, there are differences, aren't there, Pam?
There are. The moon has moved on a tiny bit, and the ascendant's moved on a tiny bit, but they are also different souls. They're different souls, and they may be coming in with a different soul journey and purpose as well. So that level of different souls, and again, there's no judgment here. We are all on our soul's journey, and
Yes.
so the chart will reflect the pattern, but not the level. And I've always said that through my work. You know, the chart reflects the pattern, not the level. And so I actually know a couple of twins that were born extremely close in time, and although they do everything together and have had very parallel lives, they are on slightly different journeys. One is on a much more spiritual journey than the other, so emphasizing the more spiritual side of the chart, of his particular birth chart than the other, even though they're super close in time. So it's fascinating to see that.
Yeah, it is. I love that. We're being asked here by Zuzali Enterprises, is the Schumann resonance impacted by the astrology?
No, I don't believe so. Check in with you, Bracha, in a moment. I don't believe, no, not by the astrology, because the Schumann resonance is actually a measurement of charge, electrical charge in the Earth's ionosphere, as I understand it. And that is just going through massive peaks because of the Earth's upgrade and the coronal mass ejections and, you know, all of this geomagnetic instability. The Schumann resonance is going crazy, but historically it has always been very steady at 7.83 hertz. And that is the exact same pitch as when we get into alpha wave, when we feel relaxed and a sense of well-being. So we have matched the Earth's heartbeat, if you like. Schumann resonance is the heartbeat. And I don't think it's so much that the hertz level has changed, but it's the strength and the amplitude of the Schumann resonance that is changing, that's peaking. And this gets into quite complex science, but I don't think it's the astrology that's affecting that. I think it's the geomagnetic instability and the Earth's own upgrade as a result of that, if that makes sense.
Thank you, Pam.
What would you say, Bracha?
Well, Pam, considering you didn't feel you were prepared for this live stream, you're doing pretty damn well. That's all I can say.
It's been a bit of a day.
Yes.
Wow. Fast moving through, wow. Yes, helping people. But anyway.
Yeah.
So anything else you would observe on that, Bracha?
I would have to say I don't resonate with there being a connection there, other than maybe the energy of Uranus in Taurus and the North Node in Taurus, in that there's an upgrade of the Earth's frequency that you talk about. But yeah. I don't have a deep enough scientific understanding to be able to say, yes, there's a correlation. I would have to say I don't know.
I know the Schumann resonance is not as simple as it looks. It's not just a kind of one-dimensional measurement. It is actually really quite complex, and I'm not experienced enough in the science either. So it isn't just that we're looking at that hertz level and nothing else. There are other dimensions to it. So that's why I want to be quite careful in how I speak about it, not to mislead people.
Thank you, Pam. No, it's great.
But it is more evidence, isn't it, of peaking of energy, peaking of electromagnetic energy, really, and that, however destabilizing it is also evidence of our evolution, which has happened so quickly.
Yes, and without some destabilization, nothing really changes profoundly.
Exactly. So it's going to be, whitewater rafting for a while,
which is exciting with all the Aries energy. You can either have this as an exciting adventure, or the more you're trying to play it too safe, then there has to be the balance, really.
And it's speedy, isn't it? Aries energy is speedy. Come on, do quickly. There's an urgency. Come on, hurry up. Everybody else is too slow.
Yes, there definitely is. Yeah, thank you, Pam. So, it's a tremendous joy to be with you, Pam. As always, we could talk for hours. I'd like to thank Radhika, who's done a terrific job here in the chat. She's really managed people beautifully. Thank you, Radhika. And for all the comments, the contributions, the support, the energy. And Pam, just thank you so much for your time today.
Yeah, it's been a joy. It's always a joy, Bracha. Always a joy to share. And thank you to Radhika. Thank you to everybody who's on this live stream. Wonderful to share with you. Hope it's been helpful in some small way in these huge times of transformation that we're moving through.
Yeah. Thank you very, very much. Lots of love to everybody, and much love to you.
Bye for now.
Thank you. Thank you. I have to find the button.